Hey guys, got a little different type of a video here that I think maybe could ruffle some people's feathers, but just feel like something that's worth putting out there. So, of course, the topic of scalpers in the Pokemon community comes up all the time. Now, I think more than ever, with everything we see on social media, talking about all the physical altercations, there's been people shot over disagreements or altercations and all that regarding it. So things are pretty crazy from that standpoint. But I wanted to kind of change the perspective of how some of us feel or how some of us view what's going on with the Pokemon market in general. So we all know the interest in Pokemon is at like pretty much an all-time high. So, of course, people in general are trying to get their hands on it. There's a lot of demand to be able to either rip stuff because it's really cool, like the Mega Charizard chase, stuff in Ascended Heroes, all that good stuff, prismatic evolutions. Um, so you have a lot of demand from that standpoint, but then also the demand that um, also drives the secondary market. And a lot of these products have become pretty valuable on the secondary market. So, we're all familiar with people going into the stores and taking everything off the shelf so that they can take it home and resell it as opposed to actually collecting it, opening it, that kind of thing. So obviously that's been a concern and been an issue that we've all been familiar with in Pokemon for a while, especially since it's gotten more popular towards the later part of Scarlet and Violet, 151, that kind of thing. Um, so the interesting thing I think is that the biggest scalpers of all, I don't think are who we think they are, right? They're not these guys that bounce around from Walmarts and whatever Dollar Generals and Targets and all that, picking up a little bit of product at a time, right? Best case scenario, especially in places that they're putting limits in, like Target for the most part has a two item limit, two item per SKU limit. My local Walmart's got a limit on 5 total Pokemon products. Um, so things with that, those aren't the folks, right? The guys that are going after that, very limited ability to get product, you know, and you got to time the restocks right and all that kind of stuff. Now, yes, is it annoying because we can't go into the stores and just buy it off the shelf? Absolutely. Really frustrating from a collector standpoint. Um, and just caveat that I got to make from my business side, I do not buy stuff off the retail shelves to resell it. I do not. If I'm buying something off of a retail shelf, I either use it, the only way I use it within the business is I've used it as giveaways. Um, or throw-ins for folks that, put in big orders and that kind of thing and don't hit. Um, or just general giveaways. And that's about it. Otherwise, I'm ripping it for myself personally if I get it off the retail shelf. I'm not reselling from grabbing it off a retail shelf. I've set up relationships where I have access to English product, not at the greatest prices, but that's because that's just how the market is. And then the vast majority of the inventory I carry is international product, whether it be Japanese, Chinese, Korean. Um, so I do not promote that. I don't do it myself because I think it's um, not a great not a great look to me personally. I can't stand people who will snatch it all up, take away from people who actually want to open the product themselves just so that they can make a few bucks here or there, because it is not a solid business model to try to go into retail locations, grab up product and then resell it. There's no there's no stability of inventory or anything like that. So it's just, you never know if you're going to be able to get something back in or any of that. And for myself, I have a normal 9 to 5 job, that I work every day. So I don't have the time to be bouncing around all these retail locations more than likely when they restock it, because typically the restocks happen in the middle of the day, right? Their normal working hours, just like many of us, um, just like many of us keeping our jobs. So, we don't have time or the ability to go in and catch restocks and all that. So I get it, terribly frustrating. But I don't think that's the biggest problem. To me, what I'm seeing, and I know people show their frustration or disagree with the practice so much, and most of the hate goes towards GameStop, which I think is most obvious because GameStop has always um, try to act like they're like customer first and push that kind of narrative and that marketing strategy. Like it's, what was it, power to the gamer used to be their slogan. I don't know if it still is. um Yet not a whole lot of power to the gamer when GameStop is um a very large account of Pokemon, um a Pokemon distribution, right? They are a recipient of a very large portion of Pokemon product, right? Massive retailer, um, from a countrywide standpoint. And then they have subsidiaries. I think they're EB Games still in Canada and whatnot. So because they're such a large company, right, they can demand a large volume of the product. Now, by them doing that, or them having that access, right, Pokemon has to funnel a lot of their product to, quote unquote customers, being GameStop, the company, customers, and in this case, those are companies. And then GameStop's been taking the product and just marking them up like crazy, right? They stop selling stuff at MSRP, and I get it, the demand's out there. But GameStop probably seeing the writing on the wall, how they've really struggled in general to stay afloat. Um, there's always there's always speculation about how long GameStop's going to stay in business and all that. So you see them primarily, full on just headfirst taking advantage of the situation where they have this essentially guaranteed access. Whether it's at the volume that they wish it was is a different discussion, but they have guaranteed access to Pokemon product. And then they get to mark it up like crazy to the market value. Now we can have these arguments and discussions about creating market value, but the main reason why market value goes up is because the demand compared to the supply. And so supply is so limited, um, to the average collector from retailers in general, right? So like your Walmarts, your Targets, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, trying to catch restocks and all that. So because of that, and because of people when they are restocked there, of people scooping them up, the access to product at retail is pretty minimal. I feel like overall at MSRP, I should say, at MSRP pricing, it's practically non-existent. It's more so perfect order. Okay, it's kind of an exception, but I don't see that being the case going forward. Still, Ascended Heroes, probably the highest demand it'll be until we get to the 30th anniversary set. Um, but I think the lowest point is going to be Perfect Order. I think it just continues to go back up in terms of demand. So there's still a limited amount of supply. The demand is still high. That's going to force market prices up in general. But when you also have people who, or I say people, but you have companies who have massive allocations across the company. I get it. Maybe per store, it's not quite the same, or at least at the levels that they wish. But I mean, you have these companies that get mass amounts of product. So now you've got these new companies that have jumped in, and I think that has created even more of an issue from my standpoint, right? Now all of a sudden we've got Dick's Sporting Goods, for whatever reason, decides that, I mean, I guess because they see dollar signs, right? And I get it, that's America, that, we're a capitalist economy and all that, but I mean, there's plenty of money to be made for them because I guarantee you they're getting pretty good deals at the volume that they're procuring. So there's no reason for them to have to charge secondary market type prices, but they do. You still have, they're making tons of money elsewhere on other products. Like, this is not like an LGS. This is not like an LGS where their main things of selling are card games, right? It's those products. And so taking advantage of the secondary market price or just the higher market price is kind of essential for their business to continue to survive. That's not the case for places like Dick's Sporting Goods. Like, their stuff is sporting goods, and more than ever, it's in clothing. I used to work at a Dick's Sporting Goods, and the amount of clothing, we were one of the biggest sellers of like clothing in the entire state and on like the East Coast. And so that's like their main focus. Now, obviously, you have the sports equipment and that kind of stuff, but they're making plenty of money on these other things, and those are their focuses. Not Pokemon cards, not sports cards. It is a nice area for them to get into where they can make some more money. Sure. But to me, obviously, it's just, it's just the greed. But my whole point is, I'm trying to highlight to you guys that the biggest scalpers, the real scalpers, are these companies like GameStop, who all of a sudden stopped charging MSRP and has gone to charging market pricing. And then companies who have gotten into the game that have no reason to be affiliated with Pokemon product at all, right? There's no connection, especially the cards. So Dick's Sporting Goods is one of them. And then you've got places like Lowe's, now Lowe's home improvement stores, and then Ace Hardware stores, and they're charging market prices is insane. So the reason why I bring this up is because let's think about this. If we had more allocation to places like to places that charge MSRP and put in place limits so that it's more accessible, we'd have the ability to get product into more individual customers' hands. Now, again, I'm not saying it's going to be at the volume that you would like, that you demand, and all that, but at least everybody gets a little taste, as opposed to, in this case, it's either you pay crazy, you're paying over $100 for an ETB, or you're scrambling to try to catch online drops that drop at like 3 a.m. Eastern time or 2 a.m. Eastern time, something like that. All these crazy hours and all that kind of stuff. Like in Pokemon Center drops where, it's extremely hard to actually get product. It's theoretically like if these guys didn't come into the game, we could have more accessibility in other markets, right, where it's at MSRP. And if proper limits are put in place and enforced, then there's a possibility for more people to get their hands on product. Now, I'm not saying this is what should be done or what's right and what's wrong. My feeling is to just try to get everybody get a little bit of something. Again, like I said, not necessarily at the volume, but it's just insane now, and that's why we have these physical altercations at places where you can get it at retail, because it's so limited there that people are just in this scarcity mindset like perpetually. And you're all geared up and you're like, it gets adrenaline going for people and all that kind of stuff, and it brings out the worst in people. I mean, I think that's obvious. We see it all over social media. um, so I don't know. I just thought it would be interesting to kind of put that out there as a different perspective to kind of look at it. That it's not just these little, these individual guys, these scalpers that we call them, which is fine because that's what they are if they're gobbling up product at retail so that they can resell it. Um, that these guys are scalpers, but maybe we should also be looking at these other companies. I mean, I know GameStop gets a ton of flack for it. We've all given them grief over it, like the Team Rocket, the UPC with the mall trace and all that, and how that like started right out at, it should be retail like 120, and it was coming out right off the bat at like $200, which is just, I mean, it's crazy. It's GameStop again. These people that control more of the supply because they're large corporations that can order tons of volume, and therefore Pokemon has no problem selling to them because it's easy sales for them. Essentially is taking product away from collectors to be able to get it potentially at retail prices. Now, this isn't something, I'm not here to cry about it and yada yada, all that kind of stuff. I'm just here to try to open your guys' eyes up to a different perspective. That's all. Um, the market's crazy in general for Pokemon. I think there'd be a secondary market regardless. Um, I just think maybe the extent of it could possibly be um, you know, could be limited. The extent to which how high these prices go. If we didn't have these guys like Lowe's Home Improvement, Ace Hardware, and Dick's Sporting Goods selling Pokemon cards or procuring large amounts of the supply out there so that they can stick it on their shelves uh, at market price, selling $100 ETBs or selling products like the First Partners boxes that are supposed to be like a 15 to $20 product for $50. I mean, when you're starting to sell stuff for twice MSRP, it's crazy. Um, I myself personally don't partake in it, but if that's what you want the set, you want to collect those cards or whatever, and you're willing to pay it, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I'm not here putting anybody down if you're good with that, but just a different perspective and something that I'd like to see shifted. Um, I don't think Pokemon's making any more money off of distributing the stuff to these corporations, right? Theoretically, they're making about the same as if they sold it, or however that works, that dynamic between them going to distributors, because Pokemon Center or Pokemon doesn't sell directly to consumer except for the Pokemon Center. That's the only aspect. Walmart, any of those, it goes through a distributor who stocks the shelves. It's not Pokemon, employees and all that. So, um, it's that whole distribution chain. And then even them, they have control over the prices and that sort of thing. So, just a different perspective. Check us out on our lives. We're live Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, typically 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Check us out here on YouTube. We're going live. We're doing dual streams or simultaneous streams on YouTube and TikTok. If you're on YouTube and you want to buy something, get it ripped on the live, or just get it sent sealed to you, we can do both. And you can just use our website, scrowrips.com, for that. And then if you catch us on TikTok, we can just use the TikTok shop. But yeah, appreciate you guys checking out the video. Just trying to get some more content out there. Just some things that I think about that come to mind when I'm just thinking about the landscape and everything in the market right now. So appreciate you guys if you made it this far. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and let your friends know if this is something, content they might enjoy. We really appreciate the word of mouth and getting stuff out there. Love to hear all the comments, whether it's whether you got something to say about me or you disagree or anything. That's fine. I'm up for the engagement. Trying to get more traffic out here. So either way, let me know, guys. All right, catch you next time. See ya.